Ready.
All right. Good evening, good early evening, everyone. Excited to have you here at today's Community Engagement and Advocacy Committee. Today is November the 12th. Welcome, everyone. Let me first announce that today we are dealing with some technical difficulties. So for those who have the opportunity to see this meeting at a later time, we apologize. We give a post apology. I can't say in advance, can I? We give a post apology for having our internet down. So we're not able to record live. We can only record the way we're doing right now because our internet is down. So with that in mind, let's get started. Today we have a very informative and robust agenda. We've got a lot to get presented upon and discuss. But I think it's all good substantive information. You'll get quite a bit out of it. In addition to that, well, we'll get into that in just a second. But let's call the order. Roll call. Mr. Williams.
Ms. Barnes. Mr. Cole.
Present.
Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Kennedy.
Present.
Ms. Musa. Says she's en route. Ms. Reyes.
Here.
Ms. Stillwagon.
Here.
Ms. Vera.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Awesome, awesome, and thank you all for attending. I'm glad you got here safely. For committee operations, let's approve the minutes. Is there a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved. Second.
All right, motioned and seconded. Reyes, Vera.
Okay, Mr. Cole.
For all those in favor of approving the minutes, we can just say aye. If there are no nays or abstentions, we can move right on. Awesome.
Aye.
All right. Let's move right into, the presentations today. What I want to make habit of being able to do as we move forward with this committee is that we begin to profile our community partners. I think this is absolutely essential that not only this committee, but also the city, those who are viewing this committee's work, have the opportunity to know exactly who our partners are. And it is with great, enthusiasm, respect, that I'm able to welcome to, and look, he gave the wave too. He gave the point. I want to invite Mr. Adero Robinson to our podium. Mr. Adero Robinson is the new president, CEO of Communities in Schools. And this is an organization that has had a rather extensive relationship and partnership with Columbus City Schools for many years. I've watched the leadership of this organization grow and transition and transcend to other places. So it's with great esteem that I welcome you here. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you. This is, okay, make sure I'm a little tall here. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for inviting me to come speak with you a little bit. Like you said, my name is Adero Robinson, and today marks the third month in my tenure as CEO. So wow. I'm really excited about this. I have some information I wanted to share with you about our organization and how we partner with Columbus City Schools. So if we could move the first slide forward. So what is our mission? Our mission is to surround students with a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. Next slide. What is our vision? Thriving students, engaged families, and supported schools. Next slide. So currently, we are now a statewide organization. We are in 50+ schools across 6 cities in Ohio. You can see the cities listed there. I can talk a little bit more specifically about our partnership with Columbus City Schools, but we also have partnerships with Southwestern, Whitehall City Schools, our charter school network. We have some schools up in the Cleveland area, Garfield Heights, University Heights, and then we also have some schools down in Cincinnati, Toledo, and Youngstown. So 50+ schools across these 6 cities.
And that would be, good sir, that would be Cleveland Heights University.
No, I'm sorry, Cleveland Heights University Heights.
I had to tease you on that because
I said it backwards.
Absolutely. Well, I'm formerly of Cleveland Heights, so I had to get it right. There's only one Heights, Cleveland Heights.
I appreciate that. Next slide, please. So This is our impact slide from last school year. Now, this year we're serving 50-plus schools. Last year we were in 61 schools across those 6 regions. And you can see we served over 35,000 students, 13,000 families. And the students that we engaged with that were in our caseload, 93% of them graduated on time and on track. A lot of our work, and I'll talk more deeply about it in a second, you can see that we provide services to the whole school. So for all those schools we served last year, over 3,600 whole school supports provided. And then you can see some of the areas of where we take meticulous data as it relates to the students that we serve, related to school attendance, classroom behavior, coursework and academics, and social emotional learning. I'll dive a little bit more deeply into that, but this is the data just from those 61 schools that we served last year across these 6 regions. Next slide. So how does the program operate in our schools? So in each school that we partner with, a site coordinator is assigned to that school building. And their job is to leverage partnerships and to connect with students and families and community resources, that's why I highlighted that, based on the specific needs of not only the school, but of the student themselves. Next slide. So each site coordinator is responsible for executing school support plans, meeting the needs of the student population in general, and then narrowing it down to individual students. Those are that we call a case-managed load of students. But it has to align with the priorities of the leadership of the school and the culture of the school. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So how does it work in real time? So site coordinators are in schools every day, all day. So when school is in session, site coordinators are in the schools all day. It's not before school, it's not an after school. It is from the time the first bell rings to the time after those students leave for the day. They're working with principals, teachers, and other support personnel in the school to forge those community partnerships that bring those resources into the schools that help remove some of those barriers that many of you know that a lot of our students are dealing with day to day. Next slide. Here are some of the specifics of how our site coordinators are working in schools. Now, the program spans from first grade all the way to 12th. So it can be any student that is being referred to by either a principal, a school counselor, teacher, site coordinator, parent. Even students can refer themselves, or other students could refer to a site coordinator for services. So it's designed to support the entire school, and I'll talk about those 3 tiers in a second. You're all familiar with the 3 tiers of support. But the goal of the work is really to keep kids in school so that they can succeed academically, social emotionally, not only staying in school, but coming to school consistently and helping with those barriers that help them to be successful. And we have the data to show how we work with those students and those teachers and principals in each building that we partner with. Next slide, please. So here's how it works across each of the schools we work with. I won't go through all the steps, but I'll highlight the integrated student supports. Now, you're all familiar with how integrated student supports should work in each of your schools. And here's how we do it. So, site coordinator, beginning of the year, they do a school support plan. What does the school need? And then they look at which students can we work with to provide these additional services. And it could run the whole spectrum of all of these integrated student supports that you see in orange. And that happens throughout the entire school year. The site coordinator meets with the principal or that leadership team in that school on a consistent basis to ensure that those services are in line, consistently aligns with what the school needs to happen for those school supports. And then we also continually evaluate the program to ensure that the students are getting those services that the school originally signed up for. And those evaluations happen on a consistent basis. They happen quarterly, but then we meet with the school leadership team to ensure, are we working on academic assistance? Is your goal attendance? Is the school culture and climate? It could be a myriad of things. Do you need help bringing resources into the school, whether they be food, things about food, is it transportation, what are those issues that the site coordinator can be that connector for within the school, with families, and the outside community. Next slide. So here are those 3 tiers of support we talked about. I'm sure many of you have seen the diagram similar to this, sort of that whole school support, then you're funneling down to small groups, and then individualized support. So depending on that site coordinator's caseload of students, which could be anywhere from 50 to 75 to 80 students throughout that particular school, they will work within this framework of those different types of services for those students. And it could be an individualized, small group, or more whole school support. I was in some schools in Cleveland yesterday, and I witnessed a small group support session with some second graders, really in that tier 2 space around things that, a social emotional lesson that would be appropriate for second graders. But then you can see how it translates to middle schoolers and or high schoolers, right? So it's really depending on what that school needs at that particular time. Next slide. So how does this translate to our partnership with Columbus City Schools? So this whole list is the list of schools that we worked with last school year. The schools on the left in bold are the schools that we're working with this year. Afrocentric College, Afrocentric Early College, all the way down to Walnut Ridge High School. Each one of these schools has a site coordinator assigned to it. Next slide. So last year, we served in 21 schools, which equated to 21 site coordinators, 822 case-managed students, over 1,300 Tier 1 supports, and over 9,000 Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports in those 21 schools across Columbus City. Next slide. Those case-managed students, right? So those are the students that the site coordinators have on their caseload. Here are some of the outcomes of those 21 schools, and I'll highlight the ones around attendance, academic and behavior, and SEL. So based off of the work that they did in those particular schools, that's the outcomes that we have that we share with your individual principals and your school leadership based off how many students we work with in each individual school. It will vary based on the enrollment, so it could be a large number, but if the enrollment's a little bit lower, it might vary. But we all measure the same sort of outcomes. I will say, and I'll show you a quick video at the end, in partnership with our national office, because we are an affiliate of our national office, attendance is our biggest programmatic goal that we work with schools.
All right.
So you'll see a lot of that as well. Next slide. And I mentioned not only are we working with students, schools, we also have connections with families. And here you can see some of the different types of supports that we've done with families, and that can vary from transportation, helping with clothing, food, all these different types of things that parents may be needing in order for their students to be successful in school, basic needs and resources. That site coordinator is not only supposed to be part of the school, but connected to the community to provide those resources as well. Because your principals are busy, your teachers are busy, your site staff are busy. They don't necessarily have the time to go out and look for those additional resources to help their students in the school. So that's a great benefit to the culture and climate of the school. Next slide. This is the program cost of the school, of the work. Schools aren't necessarily paying that cost, but we want to make sure that we are good partners with school districts, and it's my job to help fundraise, to help cover the cost so that we can be good partners with each of the schools we work with. So my development team and myself, we look at how much schools are helping supplement the cost for the site coordinator, and then it's my job to go out and bring those additional resources to bear so that we can continue to support the schools with all of the services that you have requested. Next slide, please. Now, this is I won't read the whole story, but this is Kevin. It's not a real student, but this is an impact story that talks about Kevin was being bullied. This wasn't in the CCS school, it was in another school. Kevin was being bullied because he came to school with dirty clothes that smelled. So the site coordinator did a home visit, saw what was going on, coordinated with the local hardware store or a local home store, and was able to get donations of a washer and dryer into that school, get it hooked up, so now that this student and other students that were dealing with the same issue could come to school. He was not coming to school because he was getting bullied, because of his clothes, because of he couldn't wash them. This is the result of that partnership and understanding the needs of that student. Next slide. This is Jennifer. This isn't in this school district. It's in another Central Ohio school district. High school freshmen constantly getting in fights, getting suspended, failing all of her classes. Once she was assigned to the site coordinator sat down with this student, sat down with their parents, with the counselors, and came up with a plan for her to be able to handle her emotions so that she wasn't dealing with so many anger issues that culminated in fighting in the school. There were things going on in her neighborhood and at home that no one really knew about. So they had to figure out a way, put together a plan for her to stay in school and to get better with her academics and her social emotional development as well. After working with her, check-ins, no more fights. She's passing all but one of her classes, I believe, now. And she's acknowledged that without the site coordinator, would this been a benefit for me? So those are just some impact stories of how site coordinators have worked with students based off of their needs. Next slide. I'm almost finished. So I talked about our national initiative around attendance. Governor has this initiative around attendance. All of our schools are concerned about attendance. So we're really putting a lot of effort into initiatives that are designed, to address chronic absenteeism in the schools that we're working with. And we just came out with a PSA. I'd like to share that really quickly. It's about 50 seconds or so to talk about the importance of the work we're doing as it relates to attendance. And this is the last one, this is the video.
Which is high school.
So I was tried.
Just having that sense of community and giving them a sense of belonging. And I always let them know, too, that even when they leave me, they will always be one of my students. And so no matter how far removed or how far away they grow, older in life, they will still always be one of my kids. And so just that sense of community and sense
was absent.
Jacob O., grade 12, absent, because housing. Sophia A., grade 4, absent, because transportation was absent.
Julio M., grade 6, absent, because Wi-Fi was absent.
Maria J., grade 12, absent, because childcare for siblings was absent.
Jacob O., grade 12, absent,
Because housing was absent.
Aisha S.,
Olivia H.
Darren L.
Cole W.
Preston L.
absent,
Absent.
Absent.
Because healthcare.
Anti-bullying.
mental health support was absent.
We're calling roll on the 15 million absent students.
Their reasons why are very real.
And yet the solution is a present, caring adult to help them along their path.
When communities and schools is present, 99% of our students are present and ready to learn.
So thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to share more about our work and how we partner with Columbus City Schools. Are there any questions?
Awesome, awesome. Any questions, anyone? Ms. Vera?
Thank you so much for this really loud presentation. I had a question in terms of how are the schools selected? And so every year, is it a different site? I noticed that the list on the left was different than the list on the right. So I just want some clarity as to how the schools are selected.
Well, so the way they've done it in the past is work with a designated liaison with each school district that helps us decide which schools they would like to see us have the partnership. So I used to work in my previous role, that's kind of how we did that work. They do the same thing here with communities and schools. So whoever the school district assigns for, at the district level, and then we work with the individual principals to figure out how the site coordinator will operate within that school.
So is that just year to year then?
It has been year to year, yes.
So is it safe to say 1 year the program can be there, and then if that leadership in that building doesn't want it the next year, then the program wouldn't be in that building?
To my knowledge, that hasn't happened where a principal or school leadership has said, I don't want the services in my school. It may, if the site coordinator we have to pause on a school, or we
Okay.
can't be in that school. From what I've seen, it's primarily because of budgetary reasons.
Okay, so I guess my second question to that is then the schools that you had listed on here from last year, the ones that, we don't have to go back, but I guess when I think about the wraparound services that you are providing, which are amazing, I think about suddenly them being there and then they suddenly are gone. And so I guess I want to just understand that is the idea that you circle back to these schools and you rotate based on capacity, or are we supplementing those schools with another wraparound service? So just looking at the list of schools that you just provided, I took a picture, that's why I'm pulling it back up. For example, this year you're at Walnut Ridge High School. Last year you were at Lyndon McKinley High School. So is the idea then you're just not at Lyndon McKinley High School, there was no switch off of a program, or how do you choose 1 year you're there and 1 year you're not there?
Well, the idea is to keep that continuity of services, so that we're there year after year. There are some on that list, we've been there multiple years. There are others we've had to make adjustments if, we're short on staffing, or if the cost is prohibitive for that particular school, and we may have to make some adjustments. So we always keep those lists as part of our conversations with those principals and our school liaison, whoever's assigned to us, to help us negotiate whatever the contract or MOU is. Then we can say, okay, that's why I say pause as opposed to backing away from a partnership, because the partnership was good, it was strong, but due to some financial challenges on our end, we couldn't necessarily help support some of the financial costs if the school could not pick up the other part of that cost for whatever financial reason. So we had to pause and then come back and have more conversations about, well, what portion of this cost could you pay? What portion is on my organization to help cover the remainders so we can keep the service in the school? Yes.
That makes sense. Is there a max amount of schools that you can service within a district a year? Obviously, budget, depending on school budgets, but is there a number that you cannot go outside of in terms of capacity?
That's a great question.
Okay.
I haven't really, I'm thinking about expansion, not only here in Central Ohio, but in some other school districts across the state. So there really hasn't been any conversation about any limit on the number of schools we serve. I think if the plan that I have for fundraising, those additional dollars outside of school district dollars, I think we can add additional schools that could help build that portfolio in whatever school district we work with, including Columbus City. So I don't see a limit at this point, as long as we have the staffing that can help cover the services in each school.
Yeah, because we've had a lot of recent needs in a lot of buildings that we've been talking about, and the fact that those schools are not on that list, it just makes me think, how are we having those conversations with partners like you? So thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that data. I wanted to very quickly, so we had the opportunity to visit Buckeye Middle School, myself, President Vera, a few other of our colleagues on the board, and there's some incredible data to share here, just very quickly. Student supports provided, 191 Tier 1 supports, and this is between school years 2022 through 2024. So 22 through this year. We've had the opportunity via your work, your organization's work, to provide supports and Tier 1 support for 191 students in that school. 924 Tier 1, Tier 3 supports provided, small group and individualized supports for students. On the family side of things, 30 hours of support related to peer mediation and conflict resolution. So these are real things that are impacting schools on a day-to-day, and particularly those within our district that we had hands-on experience to actually see. I participated in one of your group discussions where I told them make them pay in terms of college admission and attendance. Make them pay. You put in the elbow grease today, it'll pay off for you when you start applying for schools and you become that attractive student that they may very well supplement your costs to attend that school. I just wanted to share just a little data here. Last piece is case-managed student outcomes. 63% of students met or made progress towards their attendance goal. 48% of students met or made progress towards academic goal. 100% of case-managed students were promoted to the next grade level during the 22-23 and 23-24 school year. So thank you for that impact in our schools. Yes.
Chair Cole, not necessarily a question for Darryl, because I know that you guys will probably go through case management and training, but I think for our committee, and this is something that I believe a lot of board members have asked. We have a lot of partners. We have a lot of partners, a lot of great partners. You came from City Year. City Year does a lot of great work in our buildings, communities and schools. I work for an organization that has foster grandparents, seniors that are working in our schools and providing. And I think a part of your question, President Vera, is that we're coordinating efforts between all of the organizations that are providing these services. But I don't, as a board member, and then maybe as a committee member too, it would be great to see how we make those determinations, who's in what building, and how are we supporting, right? So we voted on as a board for more counselors in the school. So, and in some areas we probably could use another 10. So what are we doing as a district? What's our strategy when we're adding community partners? And how is that impact? Because to your point is communities in schools the right partner for all 109 buildings to expand their role? Should they be doing at risk with another partner and somebody else is making sure that another school doesn't become an at-risk school? And then we all have an attendance mindset. So who's doing it well, and how do we replicate that throughout the district? So I think there's an opportunity for us to ask and maybe dig into those type of things with the administration, and perhaps there are other organizations that we can think of to fill those gaps. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. We've got great partners. I know we evaluate every year who stays, who goes. Budgets get tighter and tighter every year, not only for the district, but also for organizations that are trying to do well in our schools. So I think there might be an opportunity for this committee to kind of flush that out a little bit. I would challenge us to try to see how we can do that.
We'll see how we can integrate that work. So I appreciate that. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Jenkins.
So I had a question. First of all, it's good seeing you again.
Good to see you too, yeah.
I worked with City Year under this man, so at Lyndon McKinley. But the question is, so for the average caseload, you said 50 to 85 normally for
It varies, yes.
It varies.
Yes.
So is there always one case manager per site?
The majority of schools have one site coordinator.
Or coordinator, yeah.
We have one or two schools that I can think of, not in Columbus City, that have 2 site coordinators.
Okay.
And then we have some that float between sites depending on capacity.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Is that, I guess, is it ever an overload of students versus how much they are handling per school?
In the site coordinators that I've spoken with, I've done quite a few site visits, even in my short time here. I haven't heard about overload. That's why there's a percentage of the students they work with on their caseload, depending on the enrollment in the school. So it would vary. Now, a new site coordinator, 1 year, less than 2 years, would have a much smaller caseload than one that's more of a veteran. But those assessments are done with our program team.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're doing a great job, but my question is, what does the process look like site coordinator to communicate back with the families? I feel like you are doing a great job. It seems like more social determinants, for example, housing, clothing, food. So, how do they communicate back with the families to let them know this is what maybe your child needs?
That's a great question.
Are they social workers?
So they're not social workers, even though some of them may have a social work background or youth development background. The process is before they go into the schools, they'll do a school support plan, and that'll be in partnership with school leadership. What does your school need? And then it'll narrow down to each individual student support plan. And those students can be referred in a myriad of ways, either from a principal, counselor, other teachers, et cetera, or they could be referred from the year before. So they've been working with the student the previous year. That's where that continuity of support is very helpful. In that process of building that student support plan, the family engagement aspect is built into that. So if I'm working with you as a student, I would have information on your family and be able to understand what those barriers are. So I would connect with your family, and your family would know that I, as a site coordinator, am working with you. So I would be with mom, grandma, aunt, whoever's in the household. And if there's an issue, let's say, I'll give you an example, transportation. Like the person said, if I have to get little brother and sister, I may be late to school, or I can't get to school on time, or I'm just not gonna come, that type of thing. The site coordinator will figure that out with mom. Car broke down, what can we do? Do we need help with bus passes, that type of thing.
Amazing. So there's initial assessment between the site coordinator and the parents should be connected.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
In addition, we have a site parent engagement coordinator that works with our Southside schools, specifically in CCS, because a couple of years ago, we recognized that many of the Southside schools that were in the portfolio, South High School, Marion Franklin, Buckeye, I think it might have been a couple of others, where the parent engagement was key. So we hired somebody to work with all those schools from Fairwood all the way going, south to 104, any schools in that area, churches, things of that nature. She connects with those parents.
Amazing.
And that's a little bit more holistic, helping with jobs, transportation, food, clothing, all those. Housing, we have a housing coordinator as well.
Amazing.
That works with families and students.
Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate that. Go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
Great presentation, appreciate it. Data. So we know data is important to tell the story, measure our impact, and kind of let us know where we're going. What's communities and school process of securing data that can help them, measure the impact that you're having?
So we have a data team that compiles all of the data that our site coordinators put into we have a system that's called Communities and Schools Data Management, SISDM for short. So each site coordinator at any school has to enter all of that data related to the outcomes that were designed for each school. They enter that data into that system, which our data team then works on to be able to share with principals. Depending on our contractor MOU with the district, if there's any, like Infinite Campus, for example, if we have access to Infinite Campus, then many of our site coordinators can work understanding about grades, attendance, those types of things. So there's that type of access, and some of that data we can look at to help inform our data system so that our team can share what's going on with those case-managed students.
Now, do you have access to Infinite Campus for that data?
I believe so. I'm not sure what level, but I believe so. But it looks different for other districts. I can't speak on the level of data. I know sometimes there's confidentiality things that have to happen, so.
Yes.
There's certain data that is released, not all data, most
Correct.
partners do not have access to Infinite Campus as if you were an administrator. They would have very limited specific data that they're asking for.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for that clarification, yes.
Any additional questions and final?
That's all.
Okay, well, I thank you, Mr. Robinson, so much
Anytime.
for spending time informing the committee and the soon-to-be watching community on the great work that you all are doing. We look forward to more presentations and certainly invite you to the Board of Education at some point in time in the future to share the great work that you're doing with Columbus City Schools here.
Appreciate the time. Thank you for your support.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Good night. Okay, moving right along in today's business, we'll go into the overview of our advocacy calendar. All right, Mrs. Hess?
Great, thank you, Chair. This will take just a minute. So we discussed at the last meeting that there was interest in kind of seeing what are the upcoming opportunities kind of throughout the school year when it comes to advocacy. So this is a working calendar. When we update this, we will share the update with you all. But this will give you an idea of what you can expect to hear from me and then opportunities for engagement as well. So we'll walk through it briefly starting in November, because that's where we're at this point. So this is the advocacy calendar being introduced. That's all you'll see in November from me. But in December, when we come together, we should have an update of what's going on in the legislature right now. So the time period referred to as lame duck began today. And so we are seeing the Senate and the House having committee hearings on bills that are still pending. And in December, we'll start to see those bills going to a vote. So in December, we should have a better idea of what's going on with some of the pending bills that we talked about previously, and then, of course, some new legislation that will be appearing, right, magically over the next couple of weeks. In January, when we come back in the new year, we can talk about then what got passed during lame duck and how that impacts the district moving forward to the budget. In February, when we meet, we should have an executive budget proposal, and so we'll probably at that point bring our external advocates to this space as well to share with you all what the governor has proposed in his budget pertaining to education and some strategies and ideas that we have moving forward to ensure that that budget funds our schools properly. That will also be an opportunity for you all to participate in public testimony or meet with representatives. So that will kind of be that first touch point that if you have an interest or if you have colleagues or neighbors or friends who have an interest in that, we can start having those discussions about setting up some meetings with legislators. In March, we may have some more House Finance Committee testimony and meeting with representatives. That should be probably a slow period for us, as that's when spring break happens at the legislature as well. In April, we will be able to share with you all the House version of the state operating budget. Again, that might be an opportunity to have some external advocates come in, perhaps even some representation from like OSBA or BASA or other associations to share globally what's going on in public school advocacy. And then in May will be an opportunity for you all to provide testimony in the Senate or meet with senators if that's an interest of yours. And then in June, we'll be able to hopefully share the Senate budget update, so where the budget landed in the Senate. And then in August, we'll have probably a big presentation on what actually was solidified in the state operating budget and how it impacts Columbus City Schools. So that's the calendar as it sits now. If you have ideas, questions about what could be added to this, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, this is a working calendar, but this is kind of the basics that we're operating under. So I'll open the floor for any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
I just had a comment, and I know we are also working with some outside partners on a lobby day, potentially joining their lobby day, and I think that's in March. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think I can share with you all that the Ohio Organizing Collaborative will be holding their statewide lobby day on March 18th. And so there's interest from other groups to utilize that space to talk about fair school funding. So if you are interested in going to a fair school funding-esque lobby day, hold March 18th, because we think that's going to be the day that we can all go to the State House and share our thoughts on funding public schools.
And thank you for raising that, Madam Vera. So very quickly, can you talk a little bit about some of the preclusions for staff and others internally within the organization to actually show up on a legislative or lobbying day, so to speak?
Sure. Well, everyone has a First Amendment right, so you should always, feel confident that you can share your perspective with the legislator. What's important as a school district is that we aren't asking our staff or our students to state a specific political belief or stance, but we can certainly support those in learning how to advocate. So for example, to prepare for a lobby day, it would be appropriate if we have students who are interested, we could share with them how to speak to a legislator, how to prepare testimony if they're interested in providing testimony, but we would not be providing the talking points to staff or students on any political opportunity.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Hess, because I just wanted to make sure that we raise the level of awareness around that so that, and I don't particularly like the word compliance at all, but I think in certain instances, this is absolutely paramount. So thank you so much for that. Are there any additional questions, thoughts, concerns?
There's not a date for that yet.
So the Ohio Organizing Collaborative's lobbying day is going to be on March 18th.
All right. And we'll certainly provide, an announcement earlier on for that. All right. If there are no additional questions or comments, thoughts, thank you, Mrs. Hess, for this update. Is there anything else? I mean, just as of recent, we just finished the Ohio State School Board Association's conference. Just a couple seconds on anything that you like to reference that is a takeaway from that experience that we can share with the committee?
Sure. So because the conference landed kind of right as lame duck started, there weren't a whole lot of substantive updates on legislation. I think what's important to watch kind of as we move forward is when there are bills in the Senate or the House that seem to attract a lot of attention, especially media attention, we should pay close attention to those bills because they may not need to actually pass through committee and the full vote. What we might see happen is that they get amended into bills that have already been voted on by one chamber. So for example, I think something the media is paying close attention to right now is a bill on on time for religious instruction, release time for religious instruction, excuse me. There's a bill in the House on this topic. There's a companion bill in the Senate on this topic. And so there's discussions that that language may just be amended into an already passed House bill. So then it just needs Senate vote and House concurrence. It makes it faster to move a bill during lame duck. So as you see media attention on those bills, if you are in opposition of one of those bills, it's important to talk to your legislators quickly to get to the State House to have those conversations because they're probably going to move fast. And they may not take they may not go through the kind of typical process that we see a bill go through. I think it's also important to pay attention to what gets introduced right now. It may not get passed, but that means it's probably going to be a hot topic in the operating budget. A good example of that right now is Senator Brenner provided sponsor testimony on a school closure bill.
Bill 295.
He was not able to produce a sub-bill today, so that means it's not ready yet. which gives us an indication that this is probably a topic that's going to be discussed at length during the budget. Probably don't need to worry about it so much during lame duck, although certainly we're going to read that sub-bill when it comes out and provide a response. But that gives us an indication that there's interest in it during the operating budget.
We expect to transportation, some sort of update in lame duck on the transportation bill that they're looking at trying to pass terms of legislation, one that we are paying considerable attention to and have some unique concerns around. So as that develops, we'll be able to share that information as well. But we had the opportunity to actually visit the Senate Education Committee today and, you know, listen to their deliberation. Yes, their dialogue around, and in some instances diatribe, but their dialogue around some of the issues that were presented in terms of primary and co-sponsors. So thank you for that update. With that, we'll move right along on into our next presentation, which is I got this covered up here, forgive me. Which is our engagement survey presentation. Listen up.
Okay. Thank you, Board Chair Cole, President Vera, Board Member Reyes, committee members. I'm excited to have the opportunity to share the results of a project that started last school year with our students called Listen Up. What you're about to hear is an opportunity that our students participated in to not only say what they felt about the culture and climate, but how they felt about the interactions with each other, some of the policies and procedures that come across to them, and also their individual school buildings. Next slide, please. So last school year, there were some things that were, I'm sorry, excuse me, can everyone hear me? I'm sorry, let me see.
I want to be sure folks who watch this can hear you too.
Okay. So again, last school year, we embarked on a journey with our students. We proposed a question: does school and community culture and climate impact student achievement? And with this project, we went to our high schools. Next slide. We targeted several of our high schools based on the Panorama Survey data. I know a lot of you have heard about the Panorama Survey data, and the Panorama Survey really goes into a deeper dive, asking our students and also our parents and then our staff about the culture and climate, not only in their building, in their schools, but also their departments and with their staffing. So what we did was we took our Panorama Survey data and we took an even deeper dive. We looked at what schools had some of our lower scores. And when we looked at the schools that had lower scores, we then asked why. So when we asked our why, we connected with the building staff, our wonderful area superintendents to let's go into the schools, let's have a big cross-section of the students that truly represent that population, and let's go in and do focus groups. On top of that, let's layer in the community. Our community partners that are already working with our buildings and with our schools that are already connected with those, let's get our students and those community members and those community partners together in a focus group type setting and dive deeper into the questions that were asked during the Panorama Survey. What we wanted to do was to really get into our why. And I'm on my wrong page. I'm so sorry, because I can't see. So really get into our why, and then prioritize and align not only the district's mission and vision, but the board goals and guardrails. So we wanted to first prioritize whole child focus. What are some of these wraparound services? What are some of these unique situations that are going on in our schools that affect culture and climate? Then align our mission, vision, our board goals and guardrails, and then aligned it with the portrait of a graduate. Everything is connected to not only build lifelong learners, but to uplift our schools and also uplift the community. And empowering the voices from these individual populations into one setting, we believe allowed us to do that. Then impact. having the opportunity to have meaningful connections with not only our students, a few of our staff members, but our community as well. And then be data-driven. As you all know, there is the perception versus reality. And what we really want to get in and to dive deep and to tackle some of those myths of why students feel the way they do, the impact of things that occur out into the community onto our students, and then vice versa. We thought this would be a great opportunity to dispel some of those myths by bringing the community and the students together in this form. Next slide, please. So how did we do this? Again, we connected with our panorama data to identify the school buildings. The school buildings that were able to not only accommodate with little or to no disruption to the school day were the buildings that were selected. We worked with the principals and the staff to identify students that represented a cross-section of the student body. So not only did we have student ambassadors, we had as a saying that I've heard someplace, we had summa cum laude and thank you laude students in the focus group. And then again, we had community members who were already participating in different schools' functions. And the rationale behind that is we didn't want to bring in strangers to these students. We really wanted to create a welcoming environment where the students felt safe and free to speak freely, speak their minds, and then begin that dialogue. So we advertised in the buildings. We created this poster. This is one example of that to encourage students to reach out to their counselors to let us know that they wanted to participate. And the schools that we connected with were Beechcroft, Briggs, Afrocentric, Cos, Columbus Iota, Columbus North International, Linden McKinley, Walnut Ridge, and South. And these, each section was one class period. We also had support in foreign language at these facilities as well. Next slide, please. So the goals, again, were to provide a platform for our students to share, empower student voice, and then create ultimately a platform and an action plan based on this student-driven data for how we can increase culture and climate in their buildings. Next slide. So we spoke to over 270 students and community members all across the city. We had district staff that was on site to not only capture the notes, capture what was being said. Each one of the table discussions were facilitated. Our first one was facilitated by members of the community. It was held at Linden McKinley. We had Ralph Carter from We Are Linden. We also had Ms. Sandra Lopez from Columbus City Council work with us to facilitate this discussion. One of our team leads, Ms. Kayrisha Taylor, was instrumental in making all of this happen. She is now, I believe, with the Department of Education. But really that drilled down work and being able to talk amongst the community and really have the students feel free and safe to share everything that's not only going on in their personal lives, but also in the buildings was a tremendous opportunity and success for us. Next slide, please. So the questions were adapted from the Panorama Survey. What we wanted to do was have already research-based questions that had already been vetted in the district. So we simply took a few of those questions, 4 specific questions, to our sessions. Each one of the tables had the questions on their table, and they were able to talk amongst themselves, take notes, and then at the conclusion of each one of these sessions, each table stood up, spoke out, and then began to share and dialogue even further with the students and the staff. Next slide, please. This is something that is truly near and dear to why we do this work. We say a lot about investing in education and ROI. And when we are prioritizing, aligning the data, doing engagement to create an impact, and then using data-driven points, you're paid and paying it forward. Each one of the categories in what we do with the Panorama Survey, from school climate to sense of belonging to emotional regulation, it all connects first to our department goal is to creating that warm, welcoming environment where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. It aligns to Portrait of a Graduate, those 6 attributes that the community, through a process, was able to identify the 6 attributes that they wanted students to have once they graduated. So the Panorama Survey aligns with the Portrait of a Graduate, aligns with the board goals, closing opportunity gaps, closing belief gaps, and then those board guardrails where school culture and climate directly align with prioritizing the whole child. It directly aligns with supporting intervention services and ensures a culturally responsive staff. So every step that we do in engagement aligns to the why and the North Star and the work that we do. And this is a basic, next slide, this is a basic summary, so I won't go into all of it. You have the printout and you also have the report in front of you, but it really shows how engagement and all of the departments, the work that we do, helps connect the dots to produce a student at the end who has all of these attributes that we're looking for in our students in Columbus City Schools. Next slide, please. Now we can get to kind of the meat of it, what we learned. Our students are craving diversity and inclusion, and how they define diversity and inclusion seems to be slightly different than what adults define as diversity and inclusion. They talked about a lot of the programs that we offer where we have specific ethnic groups separated, where we have things for Black girls, we have things for Latinos, we have things for these specific groups. What inclusion meant to them is, I don't want to be separate. I don't know the culture of my friend that's sitting next to me, and you are designing programs that purposely separate us. We want to be together. That was something that was very surprising in some of the feedback we received. How the definition of adults from a lot of what we have done is different from how the kids perceive it. So that was one of the big things we learned with diversity and inclusion. Academic and career support. Students wanted more rigor. They absolutely wanted more rigor across all of the buildings. It didn't matter if they were in one group where they were considered challenged, or if they were considered a top-tier student. Across the board, the students wanted more rigor. And that was something that, again, was surprising to a lot of the adults that were in the room, because their perception was that they weren't able to achieve. And what the students said in their feedback is, we're bored. We want to be challenged, and we are judged by either our zip code, or we're judged by our outward appearance, that this is the pinnacle of success for us, where we're not challenged to push ourselves further. So that was some of the feedback we received. Mental health and safety. They talked about not only peer-to-peer mental health and safety, they talked about the communities in which they lived in, and wanted to see more investment into safety measures, not only in their community, but we also heard, which was very disturbing, there's an uptick of domestic violence amongst teens, and they don't feel that they have a safe place to dialogue without immediate retaliation from parents and then the outside community. We heard a lot that if they take their concerns to the community will escalate it or lay their agenda on top of what the original problem was, to transform it into something that was never the original intent itself. The students also spoke about the teacher-student relations. Those were mixed. A great deal of students spoke about they have wonderful relationships with their teachers, but they felt their teachers were overwhelmed or overworked. They also felt as if some of their teachers make assumptions about them, again, based on their zip code or based on their outward appearance or their religion, and assigned different norms to them that definitely was not the case amongst the kids. So those were some very interesting things there. Another, I won't go into all of them unless you'd like me to, but student engagement and empowerment. They absolutely positively wanted a voice in their curriculum. They felt that the curriculum was being told to them instead of they being an active participant in their own education. Some of the feedback we received from the students was, this is our education, not the education you wish you had when you were here. So that was a pretty powerful statement that we received from the kids. They talked primarily about foreign language and culture. They said, my friends speak Korean. I wish we had Korean here. My friends speak Eritrean, or what is it, Tigrinya, I think is the proper name for it. When can we have languages that our friends speak? We understand the need for Spanish, French, and Chinese, but can we have the opportunity just so we can talk at lunch? And I can understand their culture, and I can understand why you don't celebrate this, but we do. So we can have that dialogue as friends where I can respect their culture and they can respect mine, instead of having them completely assimilate to ours without that exchange. I thought that was some of the beautiful things that we learned there. And then the school-community relationship. They wanted definitely more opportunities to be out in the community. They wanted more activities in their community. They wanted their community to understand them more. But there was also an interesting dynamic of schools that were in close proximity, where they felt that one school, if they had a stronger athletic prowess, received all the community attention, and they received nothing because they aren't necessarily great at basketball or football, so that the community would choose who their horse was. And they then, didn't receive any community involvement, where another school, maybe within a 3-mile radius, received everything. And they just felt that dynamic, not only in the community, but they sometimes felt it in the district as well, where there were some schools that were considered, oh, these are rock star schools, and then everyone else is ignored. And then finally, some of the last key things that we learned was the facilities. The students wanted better facilities, and some of them talked about just basic things as far as restroom facilities, athletic facilities. Just give the basic and then maintain it. Those were some of the key things that we learned throughout going from school to school. Next slide. So again, and I guess I should have kept saying next slide, next slide, next slide, so I apologize there. But again, really brief: diversity and inclusion, cultural awareness for staff. Do not judge a book by its cover was a lot of the things that the students brought up, and specifically in judging a book by its cover and making a direct correlation to student achievement. If you look like this, then the expectation of achievement is this. That came up at every single building. Next slide. Mental health and safety, again, I spoke to that briefly. Eliminating the gender bias and stereotypes. Meet me where I am. Don't prejudge and create a narrative that doesn't exist. And then the importance of anti-bullying initiatives, giving the students an opportunity for peer-to-peer. We do that with restorative circles, expanding that more. Some of the students did know about it because they participated in it. Other students were in the infancy stage in that. Next slide. Again, that teacher-student dynamic. In every building, it was training in that diversity and inclusion. And they also spoke about improving the teacher classroom management. The students spoke about just the differences when they go to different classrooms. There wasn't a standard expectation of how the education is delivered. And then in some classrooms, they commented on a student could throw a teacher off, and then the teacher was done, and then vice versa. So the students really talked about the opportunity to have teachers trained to be able to regulate and have stronger classroom management. And then setting those clear goals and expectations. And they also talked about a standardized grading rubric. They said it varies, the way that grades are assessed from teacher to teacher vary greatly. And we were all a little surprised about just that the students were able to pick up and recognize that. So they wanted to know, in this building, an A is an A, a B is a B, no matter what teacher or how the class is instructed. Next slide. In student engagement and empowerment, they really enjoyed us coming out. We had a lot of student feedback, and they pointed at us, said, you better do something about it because we don't want to keep talking and nothing happens. So that was the student engagement and empowerment piece. They want action on what they're saying. They really want a voice in their curriculum. They want more after-school activities. They want more opportunities to affect change in their own community. They're tired of being pat on the head and saying, we understand. They want to have the opportunity to have more efficacy in their immediate community. Next slide. And then that just continues what I said regarding the school-community relationship. They want to have more opportunities for internships, more opportunities to bring the community into the school as well. Next slide. And then infrastructure and resources, they would like to see more investment in their buildings and then their outside athletic facilities. Next slide. Now, after all of that, listening, the entire process took about 3-4 months to conclude, again, going to 9 facilities, and this is how we intend to apply some of these lessons. Next slide. So this report has been shared. It's been shared. It's posted on the district website, and we're now in the process of sharing with internal staff the results of these initiatives. Immediately in the engagement office, we have shared this with my team, and we are looking for ways where we can implement stuff in the short term and in the long term. Our incredible division of family engagement that's led by Seneca Bing is now taking an even deeper dive and doing personalized family engagement plans at each building, where they're going to begin to look at some of these things that the students said, some as simple as, incorporating more of our music in school dances, having things that in some schools, like in Kenwood, international potluck, extending some of these cultural opportunities further out into the buildings. So we are really looking for a deeper dive within engagement and using this information to inform our family engagement strategies and then also our community engagement strategies, bringing the community in to the schools to not only close the belief gap, but also close some of these opportunity gaps where we have wonderful partners like communities and schools. We can supplement where we can with some of these other partnerships. Next slide, please. These were, again, some of the additional feedback for enhancing academic supports and rigor. We're sharing this information with our other departments and our colleagues, letting them know what the students commented on and what they said there. Next slide, please. And I want to really touch upon the students really cared about one another. They brought up the need for more ELL support and support for their friends. Something that we implemented this year was the Pocket Talk foreign language devices to help support there. Those are in every building. And we will have a presentation for you a little later of a new PD that has been implemented for a little while, but we're looking to expand it in more buildings, and that will touch on some of this enhancing rigor and support. Next slide, please. And then strengthening community engagement, that is specifically our warehouse. And we have really worked this year to align the data, align the board goals and guardrails. Some of the things that you will see in this committee that we will get feedback on, we have a complete engagement calendar this year where we're really doing a deeper dive into our math goals, our literacy goals, and really creating opportunities to bring everyone in. No matter what, where you live or what you speak, we all have the same goals. And all of those different components are what makes us beautiful. So instead of, identifying them as a barrier, we're really looking to identify that as another enrichment opportunity. So those are some of the things and tactics that we're using to really support and undergird what we're doing in the Office of Engagement to create a welcoming environment for all so everyone has the opportunity to actualize their greatest self. Next slide, please. And then continued conversations and action. We'll continue to get out into the community to have these conversations and then implement them into our strategies, share these findings and reports with the other departments so that everyone has an opportunity to glean from the student voice and to build on what they're doing in their individual departments to fulfill the mission and vision of Columbus City Schools. Next slide and last slide. And that's just so you could see just a glimpse of the overview of the different people and kids that we spoke to. We, at each session, took pictures of all of the notes just in case something happened. Took pictures of all the notes. We captured all of that information. And many thanks to SkyNow for working with us to put this report together. And that concludes my presentation of how we are using and aligning our data to not only invest in our community, but really share with the community the return on their investment that we're so grateful for and, hoping to pay it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. So just a quick thing. Can you tell us what this is?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the actual report. It's called Listen Up, Our Voice, Our Community, that we have produced based on the information that we gathered over the 3-4 months of this engagement opportunity. It's up on our website under engagement. And we pulled out the key themes, and it's a really good read, and you can see directly even a deeper dive into what the students actually said. Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Awesome. Are there any questions at this point? Comments, thoughts? Yes.
Thank you. You know I was going to say something. So I appreciate the report, and I'm excited that we're going into the community, especially our student community, to get some feedback. It's interesting that we're now, so several years ago, we talked about site engagement plans, and that actually came as a directive from the legislators many years ago, and we kind of let it go, went in a different direction. So I'm interested to really look at how we make that a part of our culture. So what happens a lot of times when we do things like this, engagement opportunities throughout any organization, not just school, is that we create actions, we create opportunities, and if it's not integrated into part of the culture, then it kind of dies out, and then we're back trying to recreate the wheel and trying to do it again, even though you have to do it every year, because every year, and this is the difficulty about trying to find solutions. As we meet with parents and students, these parents and students are going to be out in 3 years, or in 4 years, or 5 years, and the new students and parents that are coming in want a whole different set of things. So it's very difficult to sometimes catch up to what's going on and what the need and the desire is. But what is not difficult to catch up to is if we stay with a site engagement plan, then we're constantly hearing and we're constantly doing, because it's difficult to do a snapshot and go through that. So I'm interested at how, and maybe it's not an answer, maybe it's a statement, what the strategy is to create this as part of our culture. That's one question.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So it is incorporated into what's called a title crate, and for a couple of years, our two Dynamo, Seneca Bing, and Garima Waldemariam have really worked hard on the family engagement end to make sure this was part of the school improvement plan. So they have added that, and then I believe COVID hit, and that's what happened there, and then it changed. So now we're really looking to elevate that even more and bring it back even more robust.
All right, perfect, thank you. And just two other things, just Chair Cole talked a little bit about the Ohio School Boards Association conference being here. And he and I both attended the Council of Great City Schools a couple weeks back, and we brought back some information. You know, some districts are doing really good work around student voice and how they're creating that, and maybe that this isn't a group that we may want to share some of that information on how some districts are have, like, for example, you talked about mental health. There's a district that the students have their own organization. They did a survey, they did focus groups, they went back and they said mental health is an issue in our school, and we, the students, are going to figure out how to find a solution for us. And then they brought in parents, they brought in the community, they did all the initiatives and have created a whole entire plan on how that's going to be addressed, back to them saying they want to be empowered. So having an opportunity to look what others are doing, I think is kind of good. So I'll make sure that we share that with this committee so that maybe there's something that comes out of that. And then also at that conference, our partners right next to the west of us, Indianapolis City Schools, they approached the choice and community model just a little bit different than what we're doing. So they have created regional centers where students can go. So these are the high schools, these are the middle schools in your region, and you can choose from, you can still have choice. You can go to the 3, 4, or 5 different high schools, 3 or 4 different middle schools, et cetera, but all schools have everything. So the idea that one has a football team of 15 members and another one has a football team of 60 members doesn't exist because you're having some equity issues. So I think there's opportunities for us to look at other models that we, and I'm just saying this in general, I know that we are, and wanted to share with the committee that we saw some really good work that is going on. Newark City Schools has a huge initiative also driven by students on attendance and how they improve their attendance goals by, they did it. Again, the students did it. So I'll make sure that we figure out how to share that with this committee and with the district to ensure that we're looking at, I'm always about looking at what some others are doing and seeing if it fits here. May not, but it may. So I wanted just to share some of those things that your board is bringing back.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Reyes.
Much appreciated, Board Member Reyes. I think some of that dialogue will actually even be more applicably suited in Dr. Pierce's committee as well, because that deals with curriculum, facilities, that whole piece. Are there any other comments, ideas? Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ms. Musa.
So first, obviously, thank you so much. Your reports are always very eye-opening. I think what sticks out to me the most about this one is just how smart our students are in the city. They really have their finger on the pulse of what we are missing that they need. And to kind of piggyback on some of the ideas that Board Member Reyes was saying, though, is how do we prioritize this? Because if our students are saying we don't feel safe and we don't have good relationships with our teachers, I'm not going to come to school, you know? So is there an action plan on how you're taking everything that the student said and making one more a priority, or is that site specific?
My role is sharing this out and sharing it out with the different departments and making sure that the departments know and understand what the students are saying, and then challenging them to incorporate it and see how they want to incorporate the work. I wish I did have more, I guess, ability there, but the design of how we take all this information and share it out and then continue to drill down and vet it, I think that is, you know, what the district is doing as a whole at this time. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Ms. Musa?
Yeah, I don't have any question, but I feel like the students shared all the things that they needed, and hopefully at some point we have planned to implement it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was great to learn from the students.
Yes, sir.
I absolutely love this. This is one of my, I'm just say thoughts for now. One of my thoughts. So with this collection of information, is there any type of way to keep the schools accountable to put this into action? Because I think a lot of times we get information, but then they're like, okay, or they try it once, then it's over. Is there a way to, like, okay, now that you have this collection of information from the students, to keep them accountable to actually implement something out of it?
I don't have an answer for that, other than we keep working to not only make this information seen and then show, I think in showing how the dots connect and connect to student achievement, we have our, you know, not only our board goals and guardrails, our mission as a district is to educate children and matriculate them through the process. So if they're saying that this is what I need, how can you not incorporate it? If we're looking to increase or decrease chronic absenteeism, is part of the issue we hear from the outside sources of transportation, childcare, whether or not students have jobs, but also where's there an opportunity to improve our product so that the students then hunger and want to come in. So I think that's a challenge that we put out not only from this report, but as a committee, that these are what the students are saying. So when we are putting out initiatives, we have a checks and balances to say, is this what you want as an adult and wish you had when you were in high school, or is this what the students need now? There may be some conflict there. And then also this group lobbying that to the state, where you're pushing these initiatives down, but the students are saying that may work for you, but this is what we believe works for us. And just like you did back when you graduated, we have one shot at this too, because prayerfully, we're only going to be seventh graders once. So let's get this, you know, correct, and then be nimble enough to understand what works in 2000 for the class of 24 may not work for the class of 34. So be humble and nimble enough to continue to listen to us to adapt your product.
So what came to mind for me was 4 words. The first is assess. And I appreciate this as that preliminary space of assessing. The second word is communicate. Identify the things that we actually assessed as real priorities, and then begin to communicate it out. I think what I appreciate most about this piece is the opportunity to cross silos, to actually talk to different silos within the organization. From a board perspective, that's our board committees. So again, here's the opportunity. And I asked Mrs. Cole if she would make herself available to present this information to Dr. Pierce's committee specifically. But even if this makes sense for Ms. Adair's committee, that you make yourself available for that. So the third word is embed. How do we actually, and you alluded to that in many different respects throughout your report, throughout the presentation, about how you're trying to crystallize this in a way that makes it something that's ongoing to your argument. And the last is accelerate. How do we assess, communicate, embed, and accelerate our initiatives to improve not just quality of instruction, but quality of education overall for this district? At the end of the day, I just listened to this and kind of really just distilled it down to those 4 words. So I thank you for that. Are there any other thoughts or comments? Yes, ma'am.
So I think going back to the question and the response, I think I would challenge us as a committee to talk about what recommendations we want to take to the board. And then the board then challenges the one employee that reports to us, the superintendent, to say, this is what we're hearing from the students, this is what's going on, we'd like you, it is part of our goals and guardrails, mental health, some social emotional, some of those things, so really challenging to ask for what's the plan, to your point. The district probably does not have the resources to challenge everything that the students said, but do we have the resources to hit 2 or 3, and then what, or maybe they're already hitting some, but it's not being communicated, it's not being, the students are not seeing it. Or maybe I would probably say they're probably not involved, right? You're doing something to me, but you're not doing something with me. So when you're doing it to me, more than likely I'm unengaged, but you're doing it with me, then I'm engaged. So it could be that we're doing some things and people are like, I'm checked out because I'm really not interested because you did it. Back to the curriculum, right? And that's a hard one because, you know, curriculum is not driven by us, it's by the people in that big space down on High Street. But what can we control and what can we say? So I would challenge us as a committee at some point, Chair Cole, for us to have some sort of session and say, these are the recommendations that come out, very similar to, I think, board member Adair just came out with some recommendations, and, you know, some other committees also come out with recommendations.
No, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea.
And if I may add, if we could also, you know, drill down even further. I was with my nephews, and my one nephew, who was at the time was a 5th grader, I said, well, let me ask him these questions, expecting recess, lunch. The things he responded to me was, we need more STEM in our classrooms. We need more time to talk with our friends. Our teachers want us separate at our desks all day, and we don't have any time to talk to our friends until lunch. And we need more arts and specials. And this came from a 9-year-old. So when we're having these student-driven conversations, really looking at the data, if we in nationwide having trouble in middle school, well, let's catch them. Let's see what the 4th and 5th graders have to say. What are their trepidations coming from one class to then you're, you know, switching and going to class and lockers? What are some of the things that you all need? So maybe we can be proactive by talking to the group before they get to that next stage where they see some of those issues as well.
I think that's a great value add, yes?
Because I would say, Chair Cole, when we went and heard from these districts, a lot of these initiatives took 2 to 3 years. So even the youth summit that was created, and I want to say it's Palm Beach, Florida that did that, but I'll have to look at my notes. It took them 3 years because they had to do a listening session, get the data, come back, bring the community and the students together to make the decision. So making those recommendations are important because it may take 2 to 3 years for us to implement something, and hopefully it becomes a culture piece of our work, and then it'll probably be something else in 3 years, but at least we tackled that piece.
All right. With that in mind, before I call for adjournment, I want to thank each and every one of you for your reports and the sharing that you've been able to give. I want to thank our students. I want to really thank our students for trusting us enough as an organization and as adults accountable to them to give us honest feedback about what they feel about their school setting. And I really want to continue our work, and this is not hyperbole. I'm going to borrow from Senator Craig. This is not hyperbole, exaggeration, embellishment. You know, but I think it's really important that we really push the envelope here, and we really challenge, like you said, our administration and those working with us to encourage that we're creating the kind of environments in our school district that our students and staff are calling for. And I think one of the first things that we have to do that is get out of the comfort zone of trauma. Get out of the comfort zone, the common space of trauma. I think that we have made this a settling spot and not a spot where we're in it, but then we're seeing beyond it and then working beyond it to that effect. And I realize that people have gone through their things. I'm not absent of that at all, in experience or in mindset. But it's now time to transition from trauma to triumph. From trauma to triumph. And I think the first people that make example of that are the adults, because the children have shown us better than they can tell us, just in this report alone, that they're trying to see beyond what they're dealing with. It's time for us to do the same. Start teaching, start building relationships, and start transitioning from trauma to triumph. I want to thank you all. I just want to close with just a question to you all before we get out of here. What are y'all taking away from this experience? I don't care if it's this meeting, I don't care if it's the one prior. I really just want to quickly check in with you all to see what it is that you feel like you're taking from us that helps enlighten you about what we're doing, edify you, change your way of thinking about what we're doing, call to question what it is we're doing or we aren't. I just want to throw that out and see what we get back.
What I am leaving tonight's meeting thinking about is how do we make sure that your report gets to our community partners, right? Because we think about just the administration, but we need to make sure that all of our community partners also got a copy of the data and also got a copy of what our students want to see. Because just hearing from communities and schools tonight, as an example, you know, how can they benefit from hearing that? Because they're in some of these spaces. And so just, you know, thinking about coordinating the efforts around not only what we're providing here as a district, but alongside of our community partners. So just coordinating the efforts.
Love it, love it. I wrote it down. I'm going to hand it to you. Anyone else? Yes.
It's funny you said that because with what I do with my job is implemented in the school. So I'm on this page because this is the school. This is my school, okay. South High School. So, you know, I was just like, wow, this is great for me to take with me in order to, okay, how do I, and I'm looking at some of the pages, I was like, oh, these are some of my students. But just to see and I was like, Dad, why was I not in this room? I would have loved to hear them say some of these things. Because sometimes you're working with them, but obviously everybody has what they have to do as part of their job and their function. But just hearing what the students have to say on their own is powerful, and it makes you want to reshape how you interact with them. And because when you was doing a report, I'm not fully answering the question or your question, but I'm gonna get to the answer to the question. When you was talking about the report about some students would like to learn different languages in order to talk with their friends. And that was like in my head, I said, I didn't even think about that because there is so much different cultures and things like that in a school. And I just didn't even think like, oh, wow, we're separating them so much that they can't even try to interact with different cultures in their own environment. So what I'm taking away from this is don't be so focused on what your plans are, but implement the plans of some of the people that you service. So.
All right, and then we'll close out with just one more comment. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Maybe cost saving. It's cost saving. Doing some kind of this assessment, you use your own resources instead of finding external people or expert to come outside and do your own assessment. So I feel like it's cost saving in terms of time wise. I feel like it's also measurable. Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for your insights and your outsights into our work. I want to continue to impress upon us the importance of physical presence here. Maybe the next time we convene, I'll try and see if we have some pizza or something appropriate that all of us can eat. But with that, I'm calling for adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded. Reyes and Mills.
Stillwagon.
Stillwagon. And Stillwagon. With that, all ayes?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Thank you all. God bless y'all. Y'all have a great night. Get home safely.